Greetings, everyone. Anthony here again, banners on the wall. And well, British hockey has been a bit all over the place the last week and a half. So I figured we need to speak to somebody. Let's cleanse the palate. Let's talk to somebody who is as uniformly positive as anybody can be, given the world that he interacts with. Toronto Maple Leaf fans are a unique breed, but very pleased to introduce the author of This Team is Ruining My Life, one of the three-headed Cerberus, along with Adam Wilde and Jesse Blake, that is the SDPN podcast. I'm very pleased to be joined by Steve Dangle Glynn himself. Steve, you're just back from New York, back in the Blue Room, as we can see. How are we doing?
Good. I was just saying before, in Canada, there's a, Toronto versus the rest of the country thing, and Torontonians are arrogant and they think they're the center of the universe and, this big city. And then you go to New York or even London when I visited, and you realize Canada's just a tiny village. And if you ask me if I know Bob, there's a good chance I know Bob.
I mean, certainly the thing that's always struck, as I said to you beforehand as well, the thing that always strikes me about Toronto is the biggest city in Canada, and it does have that reputation. And then you come from Britain and you deal with London, where people are not always quite polite, and everybody in Toronto seems almost like very, very personable by comparison. So that's always an interesting thing. You got really busy yesterday because, of course, for people unaware of Steve, you covered the NHL extensively through the podcast and through having been on Sportsnet now for the last little while. The Penguins did a thing. The Pittsburgh Penguins decided to make everybody wake up the other day, and Erik Karlsson is now a Penguin, and them, San Jose and Montreal have all played, sort of pickup sticks for a while there.
Yeah, that's my goodness. So I was in New York for I was visiting John Boy Media. I don't know how big he is in Britain, but he does absolutely excellent baseball breakdowns, enormous channel, wonderful operation down there. And of course, our visit was interrupted by a Blockbuster, and they were kind enough to let me use their space to record a video. I mean, I called this about a month ago when the rumors were going off. Kyle Dubas likes to put his stamp on a team. When he joined the Toronto Maple Leafs as general manager, he was assistant GM for 4 years prior. But, when you're assistant GM under Lou Lamoriello, you don't exactly get the final say on a lot of things. So once he became GM, John Tavares, that was a huge deal here.
Yep.
For a variety of reasons. That was a star choosing to come here, choosing to come home, which hadn't happened in quite some time. And I mean, you're talking about one of the biggest free agents in NHL history at the time, certainly monetarily. And then goes to Pittsburgh in his first summer, and he goes and gets the reigning Norris Trophy winner who scored 100 points in Erik Karlsson, and actually did pretty decently in the deal. I know not everyone is a huge fan of the deal, and I mean, the Penguins' weaknesses are very obvious. In terms of a future, I don't really see a ton of one. I don't know who's supposed to take over for them at any position, but that's not what Kyle Dubas was brought in to do. Crosby, Letang, Malkin, Karlsson as well, they're all on the back nine. And I mean, back three, you could argue. And they're in it to win a cup now, right now. Did the Penguins' long-term health get better with this deal? No, I don't think so at all. But did their chance of winning the cup right now get better? Yeah, I think it did.
Their lack of future as a Capitals fan makes me very, very happy. Just kind of going back to you, graduate of what is now Toronto Metropolitan University, because of course it changed its name, and
Right.
you have built something out of effectively what a fair few of us kind of do in British hockey. British hockey is very much the Wild West, and there are a fair few of us kind of doing these bits and pieces. A lot of fan media here. You've turned it into a job, and you've actually turned it into a job. The whole point, you left one of the biggest sports networks certainly in Canada, in North America, to do it on your own. I mean, firstly, congrats, because between you and Adam and Jesse, you guys have stones the size of small houses. But like, how are you not? You must be petrified at points, but like really proud at the same time.
there's definitely a lot of pride, and I was saying, I don't know exactly how it is in Britain. I know in the States, it's pretty tumultuous right now, and in Canada, it's awful. Like all the sports media networks for sure are laying everybody off, firing people, downsizing, and what I equate it to, because we're running in the opposite direction that everyone's running from. Like we're running to digital, we're running to sports, and it's like in Jurassic Park when you look at a forest of trees and all the birds are flying away, and party knows that they know something you don't, but it's that sense of adventure, right? We think we do a really good job with what we do, and the key that I always discuss with people, it's not like my conversations surrounding sports have gone down over the years. Like people are less interested in sports. There aren't fewer people. There aren't fewer sports fans. So something with the math is wrong with the industry. So I think digital is the way to go. YouTube, Spotify, whatever it happens to be, Apple Music, that's the way to go. That's where the fans are, and that's where we'll cater to them.
The thing when we were setting this up, one of the questions that's been rattling around in my mind was because here in Britain, of course, ice hockey is what my Australian friends call an emerging sport. We're small fry, although the largest attended indoor sport in the country somehow. But we're constantly in a fight to kind of punch up and get noticed, right? Like really theoretically, we're not going to get really big eyes on us unless one of our national teams qualifies for the Olympics. But hockey in Canada is culturally ingrained, particularly in certain communities around Canada as well. Like it must get exhausting, like living in the soup, I venture. I get quite tired, like where a lot of my stuff kind of focuses on sort of below our top tier, because we've got like 4 levels of sort of organized senior hockey in Britain, and I mainly deal in 2, 3, and 4. And I find it really, really tiring having to kind of have the same conversations with people to kind of alert them to what's there. But you live in a suburb of like effectively the epicenter of sport in a country that is, for the most part, quite obsessed with the sport. Like I say, is it exhausting? I think I'd get exhausted quite quickly with this.
I'm not exhausted by it, but the problem is I think a lot of people are. And hockey, I think hockey in Britain probably has the right attitude, and maybe even a better attitude than hockey in Canada does, to be honest, because it's almost a little arrogant. It's Titanic before it took off. It's the ship that'll never sink. And we, I think hockey in this country has taken a lot of things for granted. And there were some championships in Toronto in particular, but they were celebrated countrywide. The Blue Jays didn't end up winning a championship, but their popularity is national. And it was noticed, and it was loud, and it was young. And then TFC won a championship. Yes, it's MLS. Yes, it's MLS 5 years ago. So it's not quite as big as it was now. But again, the reaction was loud and largely young. And what got everyone's attention was the Toronto Raptors winning in 2019. It was national. It was loud. It was young. It was very diverse. Like people weren't shy about, mentioning the difference that you can see in Jurassic Park versus Maple Leaf Square. Exact same venue, exact same city. It's just the two different teams. So hockey has in this country, I think, neglected a lot of things, a lot of different attitudes, and a lot of people. And I mean, the good news is it's still an incredible sport. There's never been anything wrong with the sport itself. A lot of it is the attitudes around it and the culture around it. And it's not the only show in town anymore. It's not the only show in the country. there's lots of, it's a great sporting country. Lots of things are very popular here, and we need to stop acting like hockey is the only sport that exists.
Yeah. I think I think certainly the one thing I learned having been in Canada last year, particularly the fact it was during the summer, of course, was just how big the Jays are. And like and again, being in Britain, there are lots of fans of North American sports here. NFL is massive here, but the one thing I didn't realize, and not even so much because of the games that they've played over here, but baseball is really, really big here. And then to be in Canada, kind of like when the Jays were playing, and I spent some time in Welland, sort of around in Niagara, and like the local baseball team there was like attracting like 1,200 people for like,
Oh yeah,
be up below single A baseball, which was pretty crazy to kind of think about. How hard is it to be a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, really? Because as a Caps fan, I have the video favorited from when you did your your sort of your games through the Stanley Cup Finals when the Caps won, and you talked about like how many walls had you run through. And I think by the time I watched that video, it was about 3 or 4, and I was sat in work like wearing like my Caps jersey over the top of anything. But like, and being a Leafs fan at times must just like really just drag. Like there's so much potential and so much kind of everything around it and expectation to constantly just fall at just the wrong moment. And it's just, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how my friends here do it.
I look at the Washington Capitals very often, because they built around a small core of guys, a small core of elite guys, offensively minded guys. They had to go through several starting goaltenders before they figured it out. They had to go through several really disappointing first and second round losses at the hands of the same black and yellow team. Is this starting to sound familiar or what? So I look at the Caps and I'm trying to figure out exactly what they were able to do that the Leafs weren't. I mean, maybe the answer is time. The Capitals didn't win until how many years after Ovechkin was drafted? 14?
2004 draft, plays in 05, wins in 2018. So we'll say 14 years after his draft.
Over a bloody decade.
Yeah.
Like it is a really long time. I guess what's getting frustrating here is they're losing the same way nearly every time. It was a wonderful palate cleanser to see them beat the Lightning. None of us gave a damn that they got outplayed. Sheldon Keefe hit the nail on the head. It was either game 3 or game 4 against Tampa Bay. They won a game that they should have lost. They pulled out,
which is what good teams have to do. In a thing where you've got to win 16 games, sometimes you have to play bad and still manage to win.
Exactly. Not everyone is just going to juggernaut through everything. You got to grind out some wins. You mentioned the Washington Capitals. Were they the better team in either of game 6 or 7 against Tampa in the conference final, even the year that they won? That was Braden Holtby's Mona Lisa. That was arguably the best 2-game stretch of his career. And, Tampa never raised a shoulda won banner in 2018. It was only the Washington Capitals, right? So it's a real drag with the Leafs, and I think there's a somewhat of a dread in the fan base heading into this year, in particular because it's the new guy, right? Brad Treliving's in charge. We don't know what he's going to do. And if you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs roster right now, it's awfully incomplete. So we're hoping something else is coming. Nylander's contract is hanging over the fan base. Matthews' contract is hanging over the fan base. Something's got to happen here.
Yeah. It does make me wonder what the conversation must have been like this summer for Sheldon Keefe and how his season ended compared to how his brother Adam Keefe's season ended, winning a Grand Slam over here with Belfast, which of course is pretty big. Though of course, for folk not familiar, you of course do have ties to this country, certainly the more northern parts of it, because Scottish roots on one side of the family is my understanding.
Close. My wife was born in Aberdeen.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll visit Scotland every few years. Haven't been since COVID, and we also had a
No.
child,
Yep.
so that made it
That
difficult.
scuppers a lot of things.
Yeah, but my wife's grandmother and my son's great grandmother is actually visiting right now. We're gonna get some more visitors soon. My grandfather is from Fulham, and his wife, my grandmother, was actually born in Guernsey.
Blimey.
Yeah, and I was really hoping to get over there. My wife, I was having a difficult time talking her into it because I don't know if there's a whole hell of a lot to do over there, but I was hoping to do some
It's
genealogy
small.
stuff.
It's small.
Yeah,
There's no lie about Guernsey. It is small. There are a few things to do there. If you're young, the thing that you do there is leave. It should be said.
right,
But
right.
there's definitely things to see and history and stuff like that. So you've got a choice there. So you've got a side chunk of your family from West London. So I suppose you can adopt either Streatham or you can go for the Aberdeen Lynx of the Scottish National League. Have you managed to pick up a jersey at any stage from having been over here?
Yes. Do I still have it? I'm trying to. Oh, here it is, right here. Aberdeen Lynx.
There we go.
Yeah, right there.
Had to get an SNL mention on this show. Not a league I deal with very frequently because I am much closer to Guernsey than Scotland. But there we go, the Aberdeen Lynx jersey out on full display.
Yeah.
I mean, our time together is obviously quite short today, so I'll get to a couple of quick questions I have at the end. What's the big plan? That sounds really silly, but from an SDPN perspective, what is the grand plan? You guys are now shooting out on your own. You're your own bosses. What's the long game here? World domination, apparently.
Yeah, no, I think the big problem in media has been rapid growth, and an inability to maintain it, right? An inability to not just maintain the rapid growth, but an inability to like even maintain what you've already done, let alone continuing to get bigger. We're not a huge operation. We do have an office space. We do have some full-time employees. We do have some part-time, some contractors. We want to grow in a responsible way, where we're keeping people employed. This musical chairs, going around the industry is, I was laid off a number of times, and especially right out of school. And it was really frustrating and demoralizing, and this industry can spit people out, right? That doesn't mean we're immune from those realities, but we would eventually like to be doing all sports, maybe not quite equally, but a little more evenly than we're doing it now. We're pretty hockey heavy right now, but we need baseball, we need soccer or football or whatever my father-in-law chooses to call it today. I personally, years down the line, would like to get into the sciences and space and educational stuff and pop culture and things like that. I just want to be. I think I want SDPN to be a place where people can be entertained, and that's really what it's all about.
I will leave you with a hypothetical because I thought of this one. So I'll give you one of two options that you have to choose. I can guarantee you that the Maple Leafs will win the Stanley Cup in your lifetime, but they will only win it once.
Ooh.
In the other hand, the Leafs will never win the cup in your lifetime. You will never see it happen, but Leo will be a multi-time cup winner.
Oh.
So you get the cup at your house. You can eat ice cream out of it, the whole 9 yards.
Oh man. Oh.
I did like this one. I do feel particularly evil for asking it, but it was a one I was rattling around in my brain as well. But because I was up at 4:30 in the morning to watch the Caps win the cup.
I'm trying to figure out which question is less selfish, or which answer is less selfish. I mean, I got to go with my kid winning the cup.
It's perfectly acceptable. It's absolutely acceptable of an answer. So
maybe if he wins it more than once, maybe he could even bring it on a trip to Britain.
maybe. You never know. It'd be interesting. It does come from here, of course. The people of Sheffield. It was over for the World Championships in Nottingham this year.
I've seen the plaque.
Yeah. Steve, for the people who may not be familiar with you, give them the quick rundown of where they can find you and what you do.
Absolutely. My YouTube channel, Steve Dangle, all one word. The SDPN YouTube channel, SDPN. That's it. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Music. We're on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it anymore. But it's obviously not the most reliable platform at the moment. So I would say YouTube, that for me personally and for the company, that's the mothership or the motherships. And then we can take it from there. And we're also on TikTok and trying to grow that pretty rapidly to entertain you as best as possible.
Despite the fact my wife claims not to be a hockey fan, you are one of her favorite podcasts because she listens because of everything else. One day you will love F1, she swears. Maybe not. But no. Maybe. It would have to be a bit more interesting for me to love it as well. But either way, Steve, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.